بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
Okay, so now in this video, I'm going to explain you about the commonly used web service APIs. Like in the previous section, we have already explained the web service APIs. Now, APIs are responsible for communication between the two different applications, and they'll be using some HTTP based code or HTTP based kind of communication. We call them as web service APIs. Now, some of the examples of the web service API, the commonly used one. The first one we'll talk about a little bit on SOAP, so probably Simple Object Access Protocol. That's what it stands for. Now before I go ahead, probably why we'll be using web service APIs, a little bit overview if you talk about. So there are different types of applications running on the network probably, and there are different languages used. If you take there are some more complicated languages, like we have something like Java, .NET, PHP. Again, these are a little bit used for web-based applications, for websites and other programs. But the problem with these applications or the languages is they are very complex. So it's very complex, and the coding and all those things, it's not an easy job. So probably here we'll be using some kind of we also require some kind of coding here in our SDN networks or in our API communication. And using that much of complex languages is really not a good option. Okay, so the alternative is we'll be using some simple format of XML based language we'll be using, which is used for exchanging the data and the coding between the applications. So most of the applications will be using this easy options, and in that there will be something like REST API or SOAP API. So we'll see these options. First, I'll quickly give an idea about this one. Now this stands for Simple Object Access Protocol, and again it is an XML based protocol for accessing your web service, or maybe the communication between the APIs. Probably the communication between the applications, it will be done with web-based API, that is via HTTP. Now, what is XML? XML stands for something like uh, extensible markup language. So it's a kind of programming language which is based on some SML scripts. It's a medium. XML is a format. It is kind of format used for exchanging the data between the applications. Okay, so it is a simple language for data encoding, which will be used between the applications here. And again, the main thing you need to know here is like whatever the controller you are using. Let's say I'm using some kind of controller, and whatever the devices you're running. So basically, they should know each other. In order to talk to each other, they must support that particular API. Now the other option is we have something called REST API. So with respect to SDN networks, software defined networks, probably will be using the most commonly used API will be the REST API. Again, the REST stands for representation state transfer. So it actually defines a specific format of communication, kind of standardized. It defines how the request will be sent between the two different applications, in which format exactly you'll be using. So this is one of the common API will be focusing in SDN networks. So because the majority of the controllers in our SDN networks and majority of the network automation tools which are being used, they do support REST API. So that's one of the main reason. So the controllers and the applications and the controllers and the networking devices will be using mostly REST APIs. They'll be supported, and they'll be using for exchanging the information. And when you compare this REST API, when you are comparing this with this one, probably the REST API is going to use a little bit lesser bandwidth, It's more better than the SOAP, we can say, because of using the lesser bandwidth, and especially this is more applicable for running some applications which uses internet as a medium to talk or extract the information. So some of the examples of the REST API with respect to our SDN networks is like we have something like Cisco Intent. So Cisco Intent based networking, which is going to use some kind of DNA platform based on REST API format. And again, there is something called Juniper Contral, which is another example of REST API. It uses the REST API. Probably it gets the information by interpreting with something called Open Cloud Systems. Okay, so every vendor have their own API, but at the back end, the format is defined based on the REST APIs. Now, the other options, we have something like NetConf. NetConf stands for Network Configuration Protocol. Probably it is. This is again another API, which is a standard protocol. So this is mainly responsible for doing the configurations. Like we do have the devices, and you want to install a specific configurations, or you want to make any changes to the specific configurations, or you want to get some configuration information or edit some configuration information. So this kind of things can be done with the help of netconf. Again, the netconf again uses the XML based coding for sending and receiving the request. So again, this is also one kind of web based API because of the XML coding, and the request will be sent in the form of HTTP request. Now, similar to netconf, we have one more API which is also based on web, RESTconf API. Now this is more similar to netconf. You can say both are like the similar options, same like netconf. It is again used for programming as well as data manipulations, or that is nothing but changes. The same options, whatever listed here, you can do the same with the REST API as well. So the only advantage or only difference is this RESTconf will use some REST API RESTful experience. Probably if you're using REST API for configuration changes, you can use this RESTconf API option. And the coding will be different. It will be using either XML or JSON coding. So both the codings it actually supports.